Can't hear you yet.
I heard him a little
Could you,
bit.
1, 2, 3? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, I
now we
can
can
hear
hear you.
you. How you
Hmm.
doing, Jimmy? Jimmy
Okay,
Dore,
good.
welcome. Fred
Great
Hampton
to see you
Leftists.
guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely, absolutely. And I'm very happy that you joined our show, and I appreciate you coming on. I have a lot to talk to you about.
Hmm.
Because I was talking about before we speak, and our main focus that we have is speaking on policies from like a black leftist perspective. And now I see like the corporate media establishment, they always want to lock out like black leftist voices, the voices that usually have in the media, like Joyanne Reed, for example. They're only allowed to say one thing in the corporate news, and there's only one narrative that you get out of black liberals. So what we try to do here at Fred Hampton Leftists, because a lot of young black men will tell you the same story, that the
Hmm.
people you see on corporate news, the people you see in the suits, the people that are part of the Democratic Party that are black skinned, the Barack Obama, the Jim Clyburns, they do not represent us. They do not represent us, and the corporate news does not represent us. So that's why I like your show, because you kind of focus more on the state violence issue, the foreign policy issues that they tend to ignore. Hell,
Hmm.
there's a lot of progressive media that tend to ignore these issues now, right? Since I'm on the, since I'm
Well,
on the,
it's all about
go ahead, Jimmy.
it's all about a substitution of identity for actual policies, right? So that's been the big problem, right? So Barack Obama governed like Ronald Reagan, and
Yes.
and that was the big problem that people didn't, and that's why we got a Donald Trump. So that's been the
Hmm.
focus of my show. People say, why don't you focus more on the Republicans on your show? And I say, because the reason why we got Donald Trump wasn't because of the Republicans' failure, it was because of the Democrats' failure. They're not the Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party became the Republican Party. So now we have two Republican parties. And we don't have a left party anymore. We don't have lefty politicians. And even if we do have lefty politicians, for some reason they won't fight. And I don't know what that's about, but they won't. Right now, we're witnessing Bernie Sanders not do anything with his movements, never use his leverage. The same thing with the squad. The only time they did coordinate their votes was to increase funding for the cops. So they made sure three of them voted present so it would pass by one vote. So they do coordinate their votes, but it's only to screw us and it's only to help the establishment. So what I find very, the joke I make about the Democratic Party is that if it was 1860, the Democrats would be bragging about their first transgendered slave owner. So I, that's what we have to get away from. That's not progress, right? We
Yeah.
saw recently, I
Yeah.
forgot who it was, someone listed all the CEOs and how much money they're making, and it's just gross amounts of money, right? And it's really a symbol of the failures of capitalism when 80% of workers are living
Yeah.
paycheck to paycheck, and
Yeah.
50% of workers can't afford a $500 emergency, and they're listing, here's the top 10 CEOs, and they're making hundreds of millions of dollars, and someone says, where are the women's names? No, that's not progress when we get women to be just as corrupted and to be just as oppressive as males are.
I
That's
see what
not
you're saying.
progress, but that's what the Democrats want you to think progress is, so that we don't actually make progress and get rid of this neoliberalism. So they're the people who are pushing neoliberalism and globalism and the suppression of work or the oppression of workers. And now they want to make you feel better. But just like they had the CIA. Did you see that commercial they had about this
Yes.
woke? It was a woman of color who has anxiety issues, and now she gets to drop bombs and help kill other brown people around the world and create anxiety issues for them. I mean,
They
the
know
the
their audience.
the answer the answer to our problem isn't to have more people of color in banking screwing over America, or the answer is to have policies that help people of color, not to
Hmm.
have people of color doing the oppressing.
Hmm.
So
Well
you find
said.
it um, so that's where I'm. That's the focus of my show. The reason why our country's in the way it is because there is no opposition party anymore. It got completely co-opted. When Bill Clinton became president, he got in bed with the Koch brothers. Literally, they had executives from the board members from the Koch brothers in the Democratic Leadership Council, which is what Bill Clinton and Al Gore started. People don't know the history of how we got Donald Trump. It starts there. That's where it starts. When Bill Clinton and the Democrats got so scared of Ronald Reagan that they was like, well, if you can't beat him, join him. So that's when Bill Clinton had his sister soldier moment. I don't know if you guys remember what that was, but that was when he had to show the white racist that he wanted to vote for him, that he could stand up to blacks, right? So he did that, and then he cut the needs out from underneath working union people by NAFTA, right? People forget George Bush the first couldn't get NAFTA passed. It took a Democrat to come in to give those blue dog Democrats cover to vote against unions, and that kneecapped unions until today. I mean, NAFTA screwed them over, right? So that was Bill Clinton. At the same time, he deregulated the media. So instead of having 50 giant media companies, we now have 6. So everybody works for the same handful of billionaires, which is why you can't get any adversarial journalism happening, right? That's why you have to come to places like this or places like my show. You have to go to YouTube or something like that, and they're suppressing that now.
Yes.
So that's why I focus on what I focus on. And the people who come at me, it scares the shit out of them that when they see class unity, right? So class unity among people who hate each other scares the shit out of them. And I've highlighted class unity when the Black Panthers worked with the white racists in Chicago. Well, they also in Las Vegas. I'm blanking on the Black Panther woman who I saw on a video talking about how when the government and the governor came and took away their state assistance and their welfare checks in Nevada, she walked into a white church and the pastor said, "What are you doing in here?" and called her the N-word. "N-word, what are you doing in here?" And she said, "You don't have to like me, but if I don't get my check, you don't get your check." And so they ended up marching together and shutting down the strip in Las Vegas, and they got their check. So my point is that's what really scares the government, the establishment, the ruling elite, and the media and the Democratic Party is when they see class solidarity, and that's what they're going to try to break up. That's why they use identity politics. They want us fighting. Didn't Charles Barkley just say this? They want us fighting amongst each other to keep. So once it turns into the 99% against the 1%, that's what they're afraid of, and that's what I'm pushing for.
Yeah, that's well said, and that's kind of exactly why I go after the Democratic Party as well, because I always want to say it this way, and I have a few things that I want to ask you as well right after that. I explained the liberals are extremely dangerous. The Republican Party is a joke. We beat the Republican Party on all these issues, and I
Yes.
covered the issue of defund the police. And one of the reasons why defund the police soared in popularity, and now you got 55% independent supported, because you have people like Ben Shapiro, you have people like Candace Owens that will come on social media. They're like, yeah, George Floyd is a thug who deserves to die. So when they say stuff like that, they are helping us. That's why
Yes.
they lose on that's why they lose on the issues of Medicare for all. They lose on the issue of decriminalizing marijuana. Like they always lose on these issues over the long run. So they are not a threat. You know who's a threat? The people who put Black Lives Matter in their bio while propping up the guy who was deporting Haitian immigrants at a faster rate than Donald Trump did. That's who is the threat to us. You guys realize that the Democratic Party, the people in the Senate, they are funded by the cops more than Republicans. You know who's number 2 by distance? Amy Klobuchar. The same person that the corporate media establishment loved is funded by the police. And what's the result of that? She had an opportunity to prosecute Derek Chauvin, and she did not. So I don't want to hear you say you support Black Lives Matter if you support the Democratic Party, period. So that's why I have my approach, because the people who getting killed, they getting killed in blue cities, and they're being killed by people like Eric Adams in NYC in New York, who still push stop and frisk to this day. One of the leading candidates for the Democratic Party supports stop and frisk. And you want me to be scared about Marjorie Taylor Greene? Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin has done more to tank the Biden agenda than Marjorie Taylor Greene ever has done. It's the Democrats that denied you health care. And one thing I want to say, I want to get your thoughts on this, Jimmy, as well. Because the Republican voters, and this is why I always highlight, right? The Republican voters are to the right of Joe Biden on the issue of health care. 56%.
No, they're to the left.
Oh, sorry, to the left. Sorry, to the left. I misspoke. They are to the left. 56% of Republicans are to the left of Joe Biden on health care, because 56% of them support a public option that Joe Biden is not even giving you. And one out of 4 supports Medicare for all. That goes against all what the media tells you, doesn't it?
So what I try to tell people is like, Joe Biden, they keep saying, well, Joe Biden's going to keep doing his centrist nonsense. It's not centrist. There's nothing centrist about being against Medicare for all. That's an extreme position. That Joe Biden is a radical when it comes to healthcare. There's no other elected leader in the Western world who agrees with Joe Biden. Joe Biden is to the right of Boris Johnson. He's to the right of Angela, but he's to the right of everybody when it comes to healthcare. He's a radical. He won't give you a living wage. He's a radical. He won't even give you a public option. That's radical. Joe Biden is not centrist. He's a radical. He's a radical right winger, and people don't realize. They just upped the Pentagon budget, right, by $20 billion. You know what $20 billion could do? It could end homelessness. We could end home. That's how much 20 billion. That's a lot of money. People have no idea the difference between a million and a billion. The example everybody gives: a million seconds is like 11 days. A billion seconds is like 30 years. That's a lot of money. $20 billion. You could change a lot of things. So what they did, they just gave it, and there was no debate. There was no town halls. Anderson Cooper didn't go down to West Virginia and talk to. There was no op-eds in the newspaper. They just did $20 billion, and nobody blinked. Nobody blinked. And then by the way, they were asking him to do $50 billion in student loan debt relief. He won't do that. But he will give $20 billion at a blink of an eye. So this idea that Joe Biden is centrist is crazy. Joe Biden is a right-wing radical. And that's what people don't realize, is just how radical the Democratic Party became. And you remember when this pandemic first hit, the leader in the House, Nancy Pelosi, said, we got to make those vaccines affordable. That was her flex. That we got to charge. Of course, we got to make money off this pandemic. Of course, everybody's got to make money. So that's how the gears work. And as they're and when you vote for anybody with the Democrat, they're going to go and vote against you. They're going to screw you. They voted for the largest upward transfer of wealth in the history of humankind, and that was the first CARES Act. And they did nothing about it. AOC went on the floor and gave us grandstanding speech saying that this is crumbs. It was crumbs. She was right. Why did she vote for it? Why didn't they all vote together to block it? Why didn't Bernie Sanders put a hold on that bill? They did nothing. Just like they're doing nothing to get you a minimum wage. Nothing. Bernie Sanders, again, could have put a hold on the bill. Joe Biden put a hold to get the fucking thing taken out. So they won't ever use their leverage or flex voting Democrat. As Shama Sawant points out, the road for progressives inside the Democratic Party leads to a graveyard.
Yeah, that's true. I actually had an interview with Shama Sawant a couple weeks back, and that was a wonderful interview that I had with her. And nice to meet you, Jimmy.
Nice to meet you.
My name is James, by the way, so I guess we're both kind of the same name. One of the things that I also want to fault people like Joe Biden for is that he is very extremely pro-police. As you know, that those of us, there are many of us who believe in not only defunding the police, but also leading to police abolition. One of the reasons why is that police is a white supremacist institution, even to the point where Chairman Fred Hampton used to call police pigs because of the white supremacists. So this is one of the reasons why people like the Patriots, the Young Patriots, back then they worked with, they were anti-racist and worked with the they worked with the Black Panthers. And so, what is your thoughts on defunding the police, police abolition? What do you think about that?
So I wholeheartedly endorse the idea that we have to completely rethink policing in America. Policing is exactly what you said it is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, again, I come from a long line of cops. My grandpa was a cop in Chicago. My dad was a cop in Chicago. My oldest brother was a cop in Chicago. A lot of my best friends in Chicago were cops. So I know a lot of cops. And I know the culture of the cops. And I also talk to people who study the culture of the cops. And the problem is the policing culture in America. And so you either succumb to that culture or you leave. Those are the two. So that's why when you go, oh, they're just bad apples. There's no, it's not a bad apple. When Derek Colvin was kneeling on George Floyd's neck, there were 3 other cops standing there and watching it, right? So this is a culture, right? And of course, if that wasn't on film, they would have all covered up for him, which is what happens all the time, right? It's a culture of policing, and now that people have videotape, we see it. They can't stop it now. So what we need to do is like what police do is like, oh, we're going to appoint a new police chief to, let's say, Pasadena, and he's going to come in and he's going to have his agenda. Like, here's how we're going to do it. It should be the opposite. He should have to come to the public and they're going to give him our agenda. Here's what we want out of our police. Like, for instance, hey, what do you want to do when you pick up a kid for curfew? Do you want us to arrest them? No, we don't want you to arrest them. This is how we want you to handle this. And this is how we want, and we don't want you doing these kind of stops, and we don't want you harassing these kind of people. And we tell them what to do. That's how it's supposed to go. So there should be community-based policing, and and it should be appointed by the community base. There should be committees set up, and there should be review boards, and it should all be citizens. Right now, the police investigate themselves. So it's exactly what you say it is, and people don't realize that. They think like, oh well, cops are nice because every TV show is about the cops. If they were real, the people's heads would blow apart if they showed what cops really were like and what they're really doing. Every time they do a study, you find cops planning shit on people all the time and making up fake stuff. And of course, I mean, just look at who's in prison, right? Look at the prison population. It's the structure of the criminal justice system is racist. Now, everybody thought having Barack Obama as president would change that because he was the head of the criminal justice system. And what did he do? He appointed a Tony from Wall Street to run it for him, and nothing changed. They didn't prosecute any bakers. They didn't prosecute any, and they didn't move marijuana off the schedule that it was supposed to be moved up. Again, nothing. So we need structural change when it comes to policing. We need to change people's minds about it. Again, there aren't any good cops. There aren't any bad cops. There's a corrupt culture of policing in America that you either succumb to or you leave the profession, and that's coast to coast. So, and the amount of money we spend on policing. Again, why are cops in charge of pulling people over for traffic violations, right? Shouldn't there be people just to take care of traffic violations? Why do I have to have a guy with a gun if my headlight's out? Fucking come up to my car like that. Why do I have to have a guy with a gun if I made a wrong left turn? Why do I have to have a guy with a gun? So we have parking maids to take care of that stuff. Why don't they? So that's one idea. That's just one idea. But another idea is you don't hire ex-military to be police. Another idea is you have to have police live in the neighborhood they police. Right now, I live in Los Angeles, and all the cops are white, and they live about by Magic Mountain and Canyon Country, and they drive 40 minutes in their city to go police it. And what they become is an occupying force. And what you're supposed to be is, and they see them as the other. And so what they're supposed to be is a member of the community, but they're not. So that's another thing they should do. So there's lots of ways to change the culture of policing. That's 3 or 4 of them would be the police chief asks you how you want to be policed. They don't impose their view of how you want to be policed. So and then also you have to have citizen review boards. So that's the way it should be set up. We shouldn't be dictated to by militarized cops on how they're going to police our cities.
Absolutely. But ultimately, that's what the problem is when it comes to capitalism. I mean, ultimately, the police, they don't obey us because they obey the people who actually are running things as far as the economy is concerned. I mean, you're an expert in this. You know that the top 1% own more than half of all the wealth. So therefore, they're going to go to the people who have all the wealth. So if that's the case, and that's the ones who they're going to obey. They're not going to obey the people. So this is one of the reasons why, people like myself and my co-host Nick, we are so adamant about the defunding and the road to abolition, because therefore the police only solve 2% of all crimes. That means 98% of all crimes is not being solved at all by the police. So what are they there for? It's there because Black people are in their own Palestine. It's really just an open air prison that we call the hood. So this is one of the things that I was very animate about. I just want to get your thoughts on.
I have
And I.
let me just add this, JB.
Mhm,
I know you mentioned capitalism, and I just want to propose this question. I'm waiting for someone to answer this. No one
mhm.
has. I dare you to name one time capitalism existed without slavery. Don't worry, I'll wait.
What
it,
one time, Wayne? One time what?
one time capitalism has existed without slavery. Because now there was an investigation. Now you guys know there's more modern slavery right now than there was in the 1800s, right? Back to the issue
Yeah.
of defund the police. A lot of you guys know I work on 10 demands, and this has been an issue I've been advocating for, and I cover on my channel ever since last summer. And once again, I give you props, Dore, because you're one of the people that was covering George Floyd protesting. You were very adversarial toward the police. It did not evade me that there was a lot of people, a lot of white progressives, a lot of white leftists that was really weak on this issue. A lot of people were saying stuff like, "Oh, you can't say defund the police. That's a bad slogan." For one,
Mhm.
guys, that's not a slogan. Defund the police is a policy demand, and that's why it made white America uncomfortable. As JB pointed out, the cops only solved 2% of crimes. So there was a story in the New York Post. Conservatives loved it. Liberals retweeted it as well because they support the fascist police state. Where it was like, oh, the councilman from Atlanta who supports defund the police had his car stolen. Stolen. He. I'm like, okay, how you run that story like it's an attack on us when you just showed the police didn't stop him from getting his car stolen? So, so you guys making our point, right?
You would think, yeah, yeah. So the
Mhm.
idea that so what happens now too is they do listen. They do work for the capitalists. I mean, that's exactly right. Because the capitalists own the politicians, and the politicians hire the police chief, the police. So that's who they're going to work for. Just look what they did at Occupy Wall Street. Look what they do when they go into a homeless encampment. I mean, these are the most vulnerable people. They're supposed to be protecting these people, and this you would think the city, the government, the society would have some kind of moral obligation to protect and take care of the most vulnerable people in our society. Would be the people who are mentally ill, the people who are drug addicts, and the people who are living on the street. You would think you'd have to take care of those people
No, it's even
because
funnier than
there's
that, Jimmy. Sorry, but there's actually a case, and precedent was set by law because there was an officer in the school because you gotta get the kids used to our fascist
yeah
police system. So they had a police officer in school, and there was a school shooting, and the police officer ran away, and then they sued,
ran.
and then in court they proved they showed and they said police do not have any legal basis to protect you. Just to back up what you're saying, but go ahead, Jimmy. Just like so, they
Well,
admit it. They admit it. But go ahead.
so you know what's crazy, and too, it's just propaganda that I hear people ingest and repeat back. Even Barack Obama says this. Police officer's number one job is to make sure he gets home safe. That's not his fucking job. A police
Nah,
officer's job is supposed to be to make sure I get home safe, which is why he's allowed to carry a gun in broad daylight and has a monopoly on violence. He's supposed to risk his life, which is why he's supposed to be able to tell me what to do in the street and order me down and pull a gun on me. He's supposed to risk his life to save mine, not
they
to
are
risk
cowards.
my life to save his, which is how they think now. Even Barack Obama said that stupid shit.
The Democrats, they believe that in their
I know.
core, and that's why I kind of explained earlier to expand on that thought. That's why I said the liberals are so dangerous because they put Black Lives Matter in their profile and they parade George Floyd family out and use him as a PR, and then they propose a bill that fund the cops more. So what effectively happened? The liberals in the Democratic Party, they use black exploitation and black suffering in order to build political capital in order to
Mhm.
fund the forces of oppression that's killing us more. That's
Mhm.
what they do. So that's why they're more dangerous than the Republican Party and the conservatives. The conservatives are morons. And as I said, and I mentioned how the Republicans are to the left of Joe Biden on the issue of healthcare, but they are to the left of Joe Biden on the issue of criminal justice. The vast
Mhm.
majority of them support ending the new Jim Crow. They
Mhm.
support ending the prohibition of marijuana. Joe Biden can't even do that basic step. Can't even do that
Mhm.
basic step to get that done. And you want me to
Mhm.
be assessed over them? It's the Democrat Party that continue to push these horrific policies. They are
Mhm.
too. They are. Go ahead, Jimmy. But they pretty much.
So
Go ahead.
have you guys not been smeared as being right wingers
Oh
yet?
man.
Because
Oh
that's
my
that's
God. Don't get me
coming, right?
started.
You know that's coming
Do
because
not get me
Of
started.
course.
they're gonna say horseshoe theory, and then you're so far left, you're to the right.
Don't
Why?
get me started.
Why? So has that happened?
Oh man, man,
Oh, I've been
man.
bullshitted too many
So
times already.
yeah, especially ever
Yeah.
since I started Fred Hampton Leftists, I've
Mhm.
been blocked by so many liberals and a lot of liberals I didn't even know. And I want to take this time to get your thought. I still got. I know you had 30 minutes. I appreciate you being patient with me, Jimmy.
No, I'm
I
feeling
have.
okay today. I could go a little longer. I'm
Oh,
feeling
good, good.
okay.
I appreciate that because I still have.
I'm
We
taking
got a lot.
ivermectin.
Yeah, we
I'm
have a
taking
lot to talk about,
ivermectin.
man. We have a lot to talk about.
So
So one thing that's been I've been educating people on is that liberals are racist just like Republicans are. So and I have experience in it. Young black men have experience in this. I mean, I work in customer service, and honestly,
Mhm.
when I talk to a redneck, we know where we stand. They're like, it's cool. But whenever I have that like white liberal, like the average Pete Buttigieg supporter, the average Amy Klobuchar supporter, it's way harder to talk to than MAGA supporters. And when I was canvassing for Bernie Sanders, I was explaining that to people like, yo, I'm flipping a lot of these conservatives, but I go to a house of someone who support Pete Buttigieg, they slam the door in my face. So it's like so one group is definitely easier to talk to. One group is definitely much more racist. And one thing I've been educating people on, and one thing that's been a shock to their consciousness is when they see black leftists and their opinions. That's why we don't get platformed that often, because we are inconvenient to the narrative of the Democratic Party and liberal establishment, where their
Mhm.
politics supposed to uplift our community. When I tell them that Joe Biden is the most anti-black public servant in the last 40 years, and I'm gonna explain that very soon. They get very uncomfortable. That's why they block me, because they can't have that conversation. And I want to ask you this, Jimmy. You know who blocked me? One of the people that blocked me, even though I never ever engaged with her, Anna Consparian.
of course.
Now,
Of
and
course.
this is why I stand on blocking, guys. I don't block many people, but if you're just some guy who's like commenting on my page 10, 15 times, I'm gonna block you because you're annoying. I don't mind pushbacks though. I literally never I like, if you look at my history, I never ever commented on her Twitter. She just didn't like to see my opinions, and that way you see a lot with white liberals. And then they block. Man, like I said, I can go all day displaying how like this and nothing what you had to deal with. But man, I had to deal with a lot on Twitter. My friends can back me up on that. But with that said, I want to transition to that because I brought up Anna and like these same like people who they prop up the Democratic Party because they don't really care about like the real policy the Democratic Party do that hurt the black people, because we're the lesser of two evils. This is why I reject that. Black people only 13% of the population, so Joe Biden's anti-black, so not a big deal. Lesser of two evils. That's what they really believe, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. That's why Bosch told me to my face that black people should vote for their oppressors. Can you really believe it? This is what they really believe. So what are your
Mhm.
thoughts about like the meltdown that TYT had recently around Aaron Mate and like their like rightward drift? Because TYT is like the origin story of almost like so many of my leftist friends. And there was a point where TYT would like around 2014, 2013 would get around like 20,000 views per live stream.
Live
Now,
stream, yeah.
yeah, and then now they would get like 3,000 now. So it's like that shows like there's many people like me who used to watch them, many of my friends, and now they just dropped it because we see through them now.
Well, so true story. So the reason why I started doing aggressive progressives at the Young Turks was because I couldn't work there anymore when Jen started doing that loser Donald shit and all that stuff. And so I went
No,
to
so cringe.
none of us watched that fucking show anymore. None of the people who I hung around with inside the Young Turks, we couldn't watch the show, right? And so I go, hey, why don't we start another show? Hang on a second. Okay. And I was like, why don't we start another show and we'll put it on after the main show and it will debunk all the stupid shit that they're saying on the main show, right? Or we'll actually cover the issues of the day instead of doing 55 minutes on Donald Trump out of the every hour, which is what they did, the Young Turks. And that's how bad it was. Like that, me and the other people who did aggressive progressively couldn't stand that fucking place, right? I couldn't stand the show. So again, right when the show is supposed to air, Jen puts it behind a paywall. So that was anyway. So I guess my point is that they lost us. We were their core. They lost us in 2016, right? When they couldn't wait to get on the Hillary Clinton train. Couldn't wait. And now I realize it was because he was trying to get Hillary Clinton donor money. That's what that was all about. He was trying to show everybody, look, I'm a good boy. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm never going to not be a Democrat, and I'm going to push Hillary Clinton. I'll say what I have to say, but when it comes time, you can count on me. And it could. And that's why he got $24 million from right wingers and Clinton donors.
That's
And so
crazy.
I don't know how you could watch that show. They literally smeared Julian Assange in was it 2019 or 20? Like they repeated a bullshit story that Paul Manafort visited Julian Assange inside the Ecuadorian embassy 3 times, and there was never a picture of it. The most surveilled building in the world, there's no picture of him doing that. But the Young Turks repeated that CIA bullshit planted story in the Guardian. We debunked it in real time on the Aggressive Progressives as they were pushing it, and Jake Uger saying Julian Assange has picked a side and he can't be trusted. Do you realize the irony of that? That Jake Uger, a guy who could not be a bigger partisan, is saying you can't trust another newsman because they are. And first of all, he didn't. Julian Assange was being persecuted. They were trying to kill him. Donald Trump was literally trying to kill Julian Assange, and Jake Uger saying he's siding with him. What a fucking moron! And that I don't know what that was about to get. So my point is, people were leaving the Young Turks all along, and then when Forced to Vote happened, that was the end for them. Their own audience saw right through what they were doing, that they were just there to prop up the Democratic Party, to run interference. They always claim they want to fight. And when the moment came to fight, they fucking poured water on it and they kneecapped the fight. And their own audience, they did a poll on Forced to Vote, and 85.6% of their own audience was for Forced to Vote. That, if you round up, that's 9 out of 10 of their paying members saw what they were doing. And now that's why no one watches their fucking show anymore. I get twice as many. I get 10,000 live streamers to their 3,000-4,000. And they're supposed to have 5 million subscribers. Who fucking believes those numbers?
Hey, JB, I got a lot to add to that, but I'll let you ask something, JB. Go ahead.
Don't you? But I just think they're exposed now. Now when they come up after Aaron Mate, they've been for every bombing of Syria, right? When Trump bombed Syria, they called it Nerf bombs. They're very pro-war. They very military-industrial complex. They actually went to a weapons summit. They got paid to go to a weapons summit by NATO, and that's where Anna did that tongue bath to Madeleine Albright.
I think that's
she's got a problem. She's got a problem with Aaron Mate, who's on the ground in Syria. By the way, Anna Kasparian will never do reporting. She'll never even. She won't even go to a local Dairy Queen. She'll never do reporting ever. She admitted it to me. She goes, when I see you and Jordan Cheriton out there and it's so cold at Standing Rock, I'm never going out there. She said that. They're not journalists. They're smear merchants who are trying to grift. They put out these emails begging people for money. They sent an email out saying, send us money. This is during COVID and when we were trying to get $15 minimum. Send us money and we'll get you your $2,000 check. That was what the Young Turks were saying. That's the grift that they're doing. That's how fucking televangelists they are right now. And so people see through them. Their audience has left them. Their time for them has come and gone. Cenk Uygur on purpose sold out his soul for corporate cash. I was told by a executive at the Young Turks, once they took that money, is we know we have to move to the center now. And they made us all start wearing suit coats and we couldn't swear anymore on air. I was like, wow, what the fuck? What? This is ridiculous. This is you guys are this is the opposite of what you guys were supposed to be. So now it's obvious that they are just MSNBC because you can't even swear anymore on their show. But they can on their members only show, which is when Anna Kasparian told Aaron Mate, as he's reporting on the ground from Syria, fuck you. He's propping up. They're pushing pro-war CIA talking points that Saddam gassed his own people. The OPCW reports got debunked by Aaron Mate, who won an award, the Independent Journalist Award, for his debunking of Russiagate. He won the I.F. Stone Izzy Award. Did the Young Turks ever win an award for journalism? No, they won a Shorty Award for being the biggest dicks on YouTube. They're garbage. And now you saw Roger Waters from the Pink Floyd call them out on. They call them the Young Fucks, and
that's their name now. It's gonna stick.
Said the Young Fucks position themselves as people who question power. He goes, but they're not. They don't do that at all. They're just there to keep the status quo, and that's exactly what the Young Turks are. And so there's no reason to watch them anymore. And people have figured that out. So they're in a spiral. And so them lashing out at the Gray Zone and Aaron Mate was because they know Aaron Mate and the Gray Zone are on the rise because they're doing actual journalism that pushes back against the pro-war imperialist narrative. The Young Turks are imperialists.
Yes, I think that, and I'll pass it to you, JB. I won't get you in here. But now that you mention it, I think that's what did it. Because I remember I posted a tweet with Anna with with Albright. I think that's probably why she blocked me. Now I think about it. But go ahead,
Yeah,
Jamie.
that's it.
What you about to say?
One of the things that made me cut them off in my head completely was they they talked the talk, but they didn't walk the walk. And what I mean by that is the whole union busting by Cenk Uygur.
Ah,
That was something that to me it was like, wait a minute, you guys are supposed to be progressive, but you're busting unions. And so to me, that was like, wait a minute, no. If you truly are someone who's on the left, if I was a business owner on the left, I would be encouraging my workers to start a union because I want to make sure I'm as fair to them as possible. And another thing that ticked in my head was when Cenk Uygur said, I'm a capitalist. And I remember that because I was just like, you know what?
It's
That's a
like, why am I
sign.
watching then? What's the
Why?
point?
Yeah. Why would somebody like me watch this? And by the way, I never gave money to the Young Turks because I'm poor as shit. So guess what? I didn't, but I definitely stopped watching, and I wouldn't dare recommend them to anybody whatsoever. And that's dangerous for them because then if I'm talking to somebody and somebody says, "Oh yeah, watch the Young Turks," I'll be the first one to say, "Don't watch them anymore." And that's going to hurt them because the thing is, they're not sticking to their values. If they stuck to their values, to the values that they said that they claim that they espouse, then they would be doing number one, a hell of a lot better. Number two, Jimmy Dore would still be there.
yeah.
And number three, they would have people who look like this more on there that are not espousing the same talking points
That's
that
right.
somebody like a Joy Reid or Zerlina Maxwell as they espouse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So,
go ahead,
so
Jamie.
Brianna Joy Gray was forced to vote, and
Yeah.
she was for challenging Democratic politicians,
Hmm.
and in an obvious way. And then someone called her an Uncle Tom for doing that, and the Young Turks bring him on their show all the time.
Like how
What?
that's to me that's beyond the pale because to me
That's
that's
news to
insane.
me.
That's I
Oh
know
yeah,
exactly who you guys are referring to there,
Wow.
and
Okay.
this like I was always anti-establishment minded. I've known of you for a long time, Jimmy Dore. I watched a lot of different anti-establishment news. So I obviously watch TYT. I stopped watching them and I picked up aggressive progressives on that would be I remember that used to be like the only show I used to watch because I'm like I don't care about watching this clown show where you just pretend Donald Trump is like the source of all problems. It's like it doesn't do anything for me. Like it doesn't do anything for me. You got the Democratic Party funding the police more. Meanwhile, you talking about Ben Shapiro every day. What's the guy name? I see. I don't even know. I don't remember Dave Rubin. Like they do Dave Rubin segment all the time. Like stop. I don't care about Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin is a clown who only helps us at the end of the day. At the end of the day, they only help us because they make such bad arguments. They're not the one who denied us healthcare. They're not the one who is They're not the one who funding genocides in Israel Palestine. And
That's
now
what
I'm
I
talking
said
about
earlier,
that.
right?
We roasted Jank because I've been in the game as a political commentator for about a year now, about a year. And despite me still being new to this game, I could not imagine me having a take as bad as Jank Uygur had on Israel Palestine.
oh my
Like,
God.
if I said that, because Jimmy, I told you I got a lot of people that don't like me. If I said the same tweet that Cenk Uygur said, I would be done. It'll be over.
Yeah.
I would have no credibility on the left no more. People would unsubscribe from my show. It'll be done for me. But he get away with it for some reason.
Well, not only that, but I mean him smearing Julian Assange and now smearing Aaron Mate. Aaron Mate, who's an independent journalist, takes no corporate funding, and who's actually in Syria on the ground right now debunking a pro-war narrative, and then he smears him as a traitor to our country. Cenk Uygur should be fucking a cast out of polite society for that shit. What he's doing is was most disgusting. That's worse than anything Sean Hannity ever did. It's worse than anything Alex Jones ever did. It's worse than anything. You're fucking literally smearing journalists, risking their fucking lives to debunk pro-war narratives of bombs that are falling on more brown people. You fucking asshole. But Cenk Uygur's for bombing brown people all the time. He's always been for it. He organized pro-war rallies when he
That's
was in
crazy.
college. That's the kind of guy Cenk Uygur is, and you can't get that out of him. You can take the conservative out of the Republican Party, but you can't take the whatever the fuck. I don't know what I'm saying, but you know what I mean.
I know you mean. And it's like that take it so bad because what you doing is genocide erasing. And it's such a I know you've been in this game for 30 years. What, 30 years or so? I've been in the game
Stand
for
up.
1 year. 1 year, and I know that this is not a race issue. We have a religious issue. We had Richard Medhurst on our show, and he explained in his neighborhood where he grew up in, you had Arab Christians, where he is, Arab Jews, Arab Muslims, and they all stand for Palestine. You have Jewish people that stand for Palestine. But so you think Cenk Uygur doesn't know this? This is why I don't watch them. Like, bro, you're purposely misleading people. And you can't
Yes.
convince me that he doesn't know this issue.
Well,
this issue is a
like,
colonial issue. And he's running defense for it. By making he's trying to start a race war, because that would I'll get you in there, Jimmy, but that's what the Zionists want to do. The Zionists always make this about religion because their occupation of Palestine has no legal, intellectual, or moral basis. So the only way they can justify it by making a race war where Jewish people and other people feel like in order to stand in solidarity with the Jewish community, they must support Israel. But that's not what it's about. Meanwhile, what it's really about is about colonialism and fighting against imperialism. That's what it's about. It's a legal occupation. And Cenk Uygur is running interference by bringing up this nonsense. Because you can't convince me he don't know this. He's in this game 30 years longer than me. I just started. You tell me I'm smarter than him?
Of course he knows that. And it just goes to show you that he's willing to lie for whatever reason. So I'm sure that was virtue signaling to some kind of fucking donor. Hey, I'm pretending both sides are equal. Can I get some more donor money from a Clinton donor? It's just like he blatantly lied about forced to vote when he said that Kevin McCarthy could become speaker. That's a lie. Yeah. There was never a risk of Kevin McCarthy becoming the Speaker of the House if they forced the vote, if they withheld their vote from Nancy Pelosi. There was never a thing. And Cenk Uygur just kept saying that because it'll confuse enough people. And he had explained to him a million times that that's not how it works and you're lying. And he just kept lying. Well, guess what? There's justice in the world, and now nobody watches his fucking show.
And since you mentioned forced to vote a few times, so I'll give my thoughts on that. And I usually have my issues I was focusing on, and my stance was slightly different at the very beginning. My stance was we shouldn't vote for Nancy Pelosi, period.
I agree with that.
But then forced to vote came, and I'm like, well, if you're gonna vote for, at least get something out of it. And I have a tweet from like October, way before forced to vote, where I said, okay, now we got these new squad members, right? We got Jamal Bowman, we got Corey Bush. Now we actually have numbers. So I want to give them benefit of the doubt because I was being critical of them at the time. But I'm like, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And now when they get the new Congress in and they become the Democratic Party #1 enemy. And I got a tweet where I said that. So people who get mad at me for being critical of Bernie Sanders and squad, you can't get mad at me because I gave them way more benefit of the doubt than most people because I gave them that chance. So what my stance was before forced to vote was if they vote for Nancy Pelosi, they sold out. They should. Nancy Pelosi is one of the most corrupt people in the world, period. And just as Democrats started fighting as it had an anti-corruption platform. Like, we're supposed to be fighting the corruption. So if you vote against Nancy Pelosi, it's a failed project. And then forced to vote happened. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. If you at least vote for it, vote for Nancy Pelosi, at least get something out of it. You know what doesn't make sense to me? It doesn't make sense to people who like super passionately for voting for Nancy Pelosi. Like, I honestly was being honest. I was like, I'm gonna hear both crowds out because it was a big thing, right? Anti-forced to vote left, the pro-forced to vote left, and I honestly I'm gonna hear both sides out before I start commenting on it. So I gave them a fair trial, and then I was pro-forced to vote because the anti-forced to vote people was unhinged, and there was literally no intellectual argument because, as you said, it was lying about the Kevin McCarthy thing. So when I saw that lie, I'm like, okay, this is stupid. We gotta do this forced vote. This is ridiculous. And I was honest, and I gave both sides a chance. So anyone who's against forced to vote, and I wrote an op-ed. Sorry, I'll bring you in here, Jimmy. I wrote an op-ed. Medicare for All is the most pro-black policy platform that's in American discourse right now. And people wonder how I was able to convert people when I traveled for Bernie Sanders. Medicare for All was always my go-to. Because do you guys know that despite us being 13% of the population, we have 35% of the country's medical debt? We have a life expectancy rate that is literally like 5 to 6 years lower than the average white man. That's just because of healthcare. My grandpa died 25 years before Henry Kissinger did because he didn't go to the doctor. So I tell people that Medicare for All is the most pro-black policy platform, and I am very, very supportive of reparations. But you can get capitalists like Tom Steyer to support reparations because they know even if we pay reparations, we can get that money back in medical debt. They know the money is coming to the capitalists. So don't get me wrong, I am supportive of reparations, but we gotta change the whole system with that. And the problem with healthcare is such a giant problem with the black community. That's why I got in this game. So if you are against fighting for that in any means necessary, you are ridiculous to me. That's how I feel. That's my stance. And then people who like super passionate about that, about fighting force the vote, was ridiculous to me. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And now Corey Bush forced the vote on whether we should give convicted felons the right to vote. And half of the Democratic Party voted against it. So now, and Corey Bush at the time, she said, "Oh, yeah, we forced this vote on this issue, and we had all these people that came out in support of it." She didn't point out that the majority of the Democratic Party voted against it. So what Corey Bush effectively done, she forced a vote on whether we should give convicted felons the right to vote. And now I use that against them. That's the same thing we could do with Medicare for All. Put them on record, get Jim Clyburn on record, and then bash them for it. So that's my stance on that. What's your thought, Jimmy?
Well, when you say, well, I wanted to hear both sides, right? Well, what's interesting is there never was another side to the.
That's fair.
And there never was an anti-force to vote on Medicare for all on the left. That didn't exist. Everybody was for forcing a vote. The DSA, it's in their own handbook. We have to force a vote on Medicare for all by any means necessary. This is our goal, force a vote on Medicare for all. AOC said as she was running, we have to get a vote on Medicare for all. Up or down, we have to get a vote. It's ridiculous that we can't. So there was no faction of the left that was against force to vote. What you saw was the pretend faux lefties who then ran cover for the establishment Democrats. For whatever reason, everybody had their own reason. Cenk Uygur had his own reason. Ryan Grimm and The Intercept has their own reason. People with MSNBC contracts have their own reason. Whoever ran interference for the squad, they had their own, but they did it. So that wasn't a real position. You say, I'm going to hear it out. So you saw Breonna Joy Gray did a debate with someone who was against force to vote with an MSNBC contract, and he didn't have any reason to be against it. There wasn't, except he didn't like Jimmy Dore. Yeah. So this idea that you're going to hear out both sides, when you hear out the other side, there is no side. They say, oh, they even say, oh, this is going to set it back. Could you point to a historical precedent where forcing a vote on an issue set it back? It doesn't exist. That's not a thing. You always force a vote on something, and that's how you gain momentum. People see you fighting for it. Yes. It gets more people aware of it. It gets press coverage. More people come out and advocate for it. More people protest for it. That's what fucking gets the ball rolling. So this idea, well, wasn't Bernie Sanders just going to force a vote on this Palestinian issue? And they knew it was going to fail, but he was going to force it. Well, why the fuck would you do that? I thought that sets it back. So that just goes to show you that's not a thing. Yeah, and all the reasons they had to be against force to vote were just made up. They were all fucking completely papered. They weren't a real. And that's what you're talking about when you hear their side.
Sorry, Jimmy. You know why I said that? Because I have a lot of criticisms of the American left. And I used to call myself the progressive martial artist. I had to drop the name progressive because progressives are gutless in the U.S. left. They don't care about police violence. They don't care about any U.S. imperialism. So what you said is right, because people get mad at me because I call them out as liberals. I'm like, you're not a leftist, you're a liberal, and you just got the roles, and you're part of DSA, but you actually propping up a capitalist warmongering party. So what you're saying is correct, because when you look at the people who actually are leftists, they were like, yeah, we forced the vote, hold politicians accountable. But then you have liberals who always co-opt. That's what they do. They always co-opt language. They always co-opt movements. So you got a lot of people who used to support Bernie Sanders who are now sycophants to AOC and the squad. People get mad at UND who defend them, and they call themselves socialists. They call themselves progressives. So I'm not gonna run from that. You know what I mean? So I call them out like, bro, well, I really believe you guys are jokes now, and I am open about my political development. And based on what we go through, and based on what I've been through in my own life, I was strongly supportive of Bernie Sanders. I was strongly supportive of all these people. But if you're not fighting for the issue, if you're supportive of getting the police money more, and you literally helping them get political capital to do that by saying we need to do that for January 6th, when you're not voting to stop them from funding the police more, when Bernie Sanders, you guys realize he supports funding police more. The progressives need to move on from these people. Because compared to where I was last January, and sorry, Jake, I'll get you in here very soon. Where I was last January, I was like a moderate. I didn't think I was. But now there's a lot of people that's on the progressive left where they are behind on a lot of these issues. They are really behind. They don't care about state violence. You mentioned Julian Assange. These same people that always spend their time talking about podcast hosts all day, they never talk about Julian Assange. They not talk about
Never.
Colombia. Have you ever seen these people talk about Colombia? The people with Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome, the people with Ryan Knight derangement syndrome, the people that only spend their time talking about media personalities. That's what we don't do here. We don't spend our time talking about that stuff because we want to talk about the real issues. So my criticism of TYT is how he got Israel-Palestine wrong, how he get the issue of holding the Democratic Party wrong.
Well, I like how they immediately after Trump was out of office, the shit liberals is what I call them, shit libs. They immediately started to pretend that Tucker Carlson was the problem in America. Tucker Carlson doesn't have any power in America. He's never been elected to anything. He never voted on a bill. And why is it that Tucker Carlson has more anti-war people on his show than MSNBC and CNN combined? That they should be embarrassed about that. So I'll just
go ahead, JB. I won't bring you in because I went for a long time. Go ahead, JB.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jimmy. I just want to check up because I appreciate you staying here long. I'm having a great time. How much longer do you have? I just want to be respectful of your time.
I actually have to go, but I can stay up for about 10 more minutes. Is that all right?
Okay. I have one question I want to ask you. And this is obviously being discussion online. I want to get your chance to like kind of explain your mindset and your thought process on this, because when you have the Black Panthers and we have Fred Hampton, they work with the Young Patriots. They was mostly focused on stopping anti-racism and fighting against white supremacy. So it wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't. I mostly just want to give you a chance to like explain your mindset, and I'm not sure where I come from. And I actually had a different stance on this than a lot of people do. And a lot of people can get mad at me all they want, but I think I can explain it really well. And I want to make sure I get this in before you leave here. My stance, people got mad at me because I said I am willing to work with anyone if on my terms. They got mad at me for saying that.
I know.
People got mad at you because you interviewed the Boogaloo Boys, and
I just interviewed them.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a fair chance to explain, Jimmy. I'm not trying to get you, but they saying that you shouldn't have platformed someone with such a extreme racist ideology, and what the Patriots, what there was about fighting white supremacy,
right?
Actually, so I'm gonna explain my stance, and I won't have you explain yours, and it's just literally that be that simple. So my stance is, I live in a red state. I have no choice but to talk to conservatives. I'll get your JV's response after Jamie as well. I notice the people who get mad at people who propose we work with conservatives. Look at their location, Jimmy. It's always the same spot. In New York, California, Brooklyn. Like they always live in deep blue areas. I sold cars in Kansas. I have no choice but to talk to conservative guys. No choice. It's not an option for me to ignore if I actually want change in my community. So one thing I have, and to back up my point, why I wasn't mad at you at the outrage. I just want to address it because I know people want me to ask you this. But the reason why I wasn't mad is because I am a big advocate of direct ballot initiatives. Throughout the course of this conversation, we explain why we don't trust politicians. They're not the squad, Bernie Sanders. They're not going to fight for you. So I think now we need to focus on ballot initiatives. Because in Missouri, we passed medical marijuana. We increased the minimum wage. We got Medicaid expansion because of that. So if you are one of the people who lose your mind at people who propose to work at conservatives, let me propose a very simple scenario for you. Let's say you are working on an initiative to pass a Medicaid expansion bill, which will help my grandma, help the Black community out, save countless lives, right? You need 1,000 signatures. Let's keep the numbers even to keep it simple. You need 1,000 signatures. You got 980. And then a group of Boogaloo Boys said, hey, I will sign your petition. And you get Medicare expansion passed. Are you telling me you would not take their signatures? My position is, if you willing not to take their signatures to actually improve people's lives because you're like, oh, I can't work with them, you are deeply unserious. You're a deeply unserious person. Now, with that said, that's what I mean when I say work with them. Because I feel like there's been muddying in the waters on this issue. Where they say, oh, you want to work with the far-right racists? You want to work with the Boogaloo racists? I'm like, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
What does that mean? I give you the political example, because that political example is a real life offline example of what we talking about. The whole
That's exactly
sorry,
right.
Jim, I went long, but I'll give you your thoughts here real quick. The whole
Yeah.
red, brown alliance thing is an internet contrived nonsense that doesn't exist. If you're actually an organizer, I never seen it. I'm around lefties all the time. I don't know anyone who's like, oh, I can't wait to work with fascists. No, that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So what I'm telling you is, I want to work with them to help pass my ballot initiatives. That's it. I'm not pushing no racist agenda. None of that. But with that said, that's what my stance is. I want to ask you. I want to give you a chance to clarify. If people like Jim Dore advocate working with racists, he don't understand the history of the Black Panthers. This is your chance to clarify that. This is where I stand. Where do you stand on this issue, Jimmy?
So, every person I've met who criticized me for interviewing Magnus didn't watch the interview. Every single person. No one who ever watched that interview criticized me, because I don't know if you know, during that interview, I said, I'm interviewing this guy. I'm not endorsing this guy. I'm not endorsing the Boogaloo Boys. I'm not doing any of that. I don't know anything about the Boogaloo Boys. I'm interviewing this guy because I saw him give a speech at the state capitol in Michigan, and he was standing there with a Black Lives Matter person and an LGBT activist. And that's why I'm interviewing this guy. And all I'm doing is interviewing this guy. And so people, of course, want to smear me because at that time, I was pushing for forced to vote against and exposing the Justice Democrats and and AOC and the squad. And so they, again, used a smear tactic to make it look like Jimmy Dore's. And the reason why I brought him on was because I didn't know anything about the fucking Boogaloo Boys or the Proud Boys. I thought they were the same. And it turned out the Boogaloo Boys were invented as a counter to the Proud Boys. They're anti-racist. They worked with Black lives. Now, not all of them, but it's been documented that they provided protection for Black Lives Matter protests. Magnus himself admitted to being gay. He's not gay, to not 100% straight, is what he said. They're anti-cop. They're anti-war. So what I try to tell people is that I've been in several unions, and the way you organize people is you organize them along common interests, and you don't show up on the shop floor and go, who here is a Proud Boy? You're out. Who's here is a Boogaloo Boy? You're out.
Yeah.
Who's a libertarian? You're out. Who's a gun nut? You're out. Who voted for Trump? You're out. Who's left? Now we're going to organize against the man. That's not how it works. So when people say, and you hear a lot of people who call themselves socialists say, we have to organize along class lines. Well, what the fuck do you think that means? That means organizing with fucking Trump voters. That's exactly what that means. Class solidarity, not left-right solidarity, class. And that's what they can't get through their fucking head. That's how you organize. And the problem with that guy, Magnus, who's a Boogaloo Boy, is that those are the kind of people who used to vote for Democrats 30 years ago, and they aren't anymore, because they've been squashed also by the fucking capitalist machine. Those guys are victims of the capitalist machine, just like if that guy's unemployed. He wasn't getting his COVID relief. That's why everybody's fucking bringing guns to the Capitol, because their livelihoods are being taken away from them. So why don't you engage them? And so what I tell people is, what is your message for that guy? That guy says he's pro-Black Lives Matter. He says he's pro-LGBTQ. He's anti-Trump. He's anti-war. You don't have a message for that guy? That's your fucking failure. And those are people trying to conflate what was happening. Everybody, they wanted to make you think half the country's racist, and so we can't work with them. The Republican Party's always been racist. 3 out of the last 4 RNC chair people apologized for the fucking Southern strategy they've been doing my whole life. So this idea that racism just got invented by Trump is fucking crazy. And so they've been working with these motherfuckers. Joe Biden's a racist. The people are in fucking prison because of Joe Biden's racism, not because of Donald Trump. So that's what I say. Nobody who watched that interview with me doing that interview could criticize me, except that fucking jerk off Jerry who claims to be a socialist. And I go, what's your message for a guy like Matt? He goes, I don't have a message for him. I go, well, then you don't know how to fucking organize. That's not how organizing works, and that's why nobody ever heard of that guy. Yeah. I'm just telling. So if you're going to organize, when you go to at Occupy Wall Street? Did you go and ask somebody, are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? Are you a libertarian? Are you a socialist? Are you a progressive? Are you a boogaloo? You don't fucking do that. That's not how you organize.
Exactly.
You
It's
go,
not
here's
real.
our set. Here's our ideas. Here's our fucking goals. Do you share these goals? Do you want to work with us? Let's work. Hey, that's why Bernie Sanders hooks up with fucking right wingers to end the war in Yemen. It doesn't matter if you're for ending the war in Yemen. I'll work with you. Doesn't matter who the fuck you are.
Yeah.
You think that it was all lefty liberals who went to fight the Nazis in World War II? Who do you think was there? Was lots of Southern racists over there fighting fucking Hitler and the Nazis.
Mm-hmm. Just one thing I was thinking about, you know, it's accurate that you have to work with people who you may not agree with. A lot of people don't know this, but one of my friends is actually a Boogaloo boy. So I'm gonna put that out there right now. He knows that I am a socialist. He also knows that I am gay, and he loves me like a brother. The thing, though, is that a lot of people seem to think that you're advocating for working with white supremacists. Here's the issue. If it was white supremacists, here's the thing: white supremacists don't want to work with us, so therefore it wouldn't happen.
Right.
So therefore, to say that, you know, you're advocating for socialist policies and things like that, and uniting with people who are black, they're not white supremacists. Now, I do have a small pushback on something you said earlier.
Okay.
You said that the Black Panthers work with white supremacists. That's not entirely accurate, because the thing is that the Young Patriots actually were anti-racist. Right. And a lot of the white supremacists that were part of them actually end up leaving when they started to work with the Black Panthers. So the Young Patriots were actually anti-racist. So the notion of Black Panthers working with white supremacists, it doesn't really square as
so
far
let me
as
ask
history.
Okay, fill me in on this. I was always under the impression that the Young Patriots were Southern racists, and then when Fred Hampton engaged them, eventually they got rid of their Confederate flag and they got rid of they shook out the racists of their organization. Yeah. So wasn't there an evolution?
Yeah, like
there
JB
was.
said, a lot of them. Sorry, JB, I'll try let you try my be really quick. Just like you said, a lot of those people, the reason why Fred Hampton worked with them, because they committed to fighting the racists. That's why that's why there was a little bit pushback, because people say you shouldn't work with people who are still pushing hardcore racist policy.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say, and Jamie Dore said this a little bit earlier, and I'll pass it right back to you, JB, because you said Joe Biden's a racist. So you guys gotta understand that what gives you the automatic assumption that I think you're not racist? So I'm giving all y'all white people the benefit of the doubt. I'm sorry. Like, if I see you work for Medicare for All, because I just said I have an op-ed where I wrote in great detail why Medicare for All is the most pro-black policy, right? Joe Biden's denying us that. Joe Biden is locking up us in cages. You got people who think that they got the moral high ground over me, like, oh, you gonna support Joe Biden? They got Black Lives Matter in their profile. I'm like, bro, Joe Biden in his first 100 days deported more Haitian immigrants than Donald Trump in his first term. You say you stand for Black lives, you support the Democratic Party. You say I don't. You say the people who don't support Joe Biden doesn't. So my assumption, because I see you support Jim Crow Joe, I'm like, he may be racist, he may not. So I'm not even assuming, like, even the white liberals who got mad at you, I don't know if you're racist. So you gotta prove it to me. So if I see someone who's actually willing to sign that Medicaid ballot, like I told you, I'm like, okay, so he's fighting for healthcare for my community. Because a big part of Republican reason why they don't support these socialist policies, they support socialism for the rich. When Jeff Bezos and all their Wall Street homies get bailed out, they're not mad. The reason why they're scared of socialist policy is because they don't want it to uplift black lives. Because they love the hierarchy. Joe Biden even said he loved the hierarchy, the fact that his kids can go to good schools, but black people can't go to school unless they go into student debt. We carry the most student debt, and that's the system that Joe Biden want to keep. But you want to
That's right.
say you prop up Joe Biden, who want to keep this system that keeps us down. I can talk about this all day, so I'll go to JB here very soon. But you want to prop this guy up who keeps us down with the bankruptcy bill and the crime bill, and there are people that think that Donald Trump did more damage to the black community in 4 years than Joe Biden did in 40. Bro, the crime bill and the bankruptcy bill did more damage than the black community than anyone else. I dare anyone else to find any public servant that passed any legislation.
That's right.
That will get that done. Because Marjorie Taylor Greene is never going to get that passed. She's ineffective. Right. Joe Biden is an effective, smooth politician, despite how he plays. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he gets this stuff passed. But anyway, JB, I need to stop ranting. And we let you go, Jamie. I want to get JB here, and then we send you off here soon.
One point I want to make to and anybody that's watching: liberals can be white supremacists too.
Exactly.
I want you guys to think about that. Liberals can be white supremacists too. I want you guys to and white supremacists can also be black. Because I want you to look at Candace Owens. I want you to look at Kamala Harris. I want you to look at Tim Scott. I want you to look at all these people. There are some black white supremacists out there as well. And so for you to try to say that liberals, they're not really racist, or you try to, square the circle with thinking that, oh, they're just neoliberal, but they're not white supremacists, wrong. Because if it goes against, because a lot of times they will use class divide to attack us. Because then they want to use the poor whites as their attack dogs.
Yeah.
So if you're poor and white, are you sick and tired of being used by the elites? Yeah. I hope you are. And we're sick and tired of also being attacked. And so let me say this. If you are for, class solidarity, if you're for defunding the police and the road to abolition, if you are for gun rights, not just for white people, also for black people as well. If you are for rights regarding, LGBTQ, if you're for, getting rid of these for-profit wars, if you're for, people who are immigrants coming into this country to have the right to be able to seek asylum and things like that, and if you want to work with me, okay. But white supremacists don't want to work with me because they don't like to have any unification on those issues. So I want to say thank you to, Jimmy Dore for giving me that clarification, because I was a little nervous about that. And I'm going to be real with you. I don't watch your show. I don't watch your show.
It's okay.
I'm going to be real, because the thing is that I just never took the time to do it. And part of it is because, there's sometimes people will say things and it kind of gets into your brain and it's like, well, should I, shouldn't I don't know. And talking to you, you seem like a fairly reasonable guy. I mean, there's going to be things where we disagree on, but for the most part, I think we agree on a lot.
The thing that caught my ear was that I thought the Boogaloo Boys was just like the Proud Boys. And when that guy gave a speech and he said that we have more in common than we have that keeps us apart. And when he said he wasn't racist and he was against the wall, I was like, wow, well, this seems, I think I need to interview this guy. Is this real? And so I brought him on. And again, I gave the disclaimer that I don't endorse anything. I don't endorse any group. I'm just interviewing this guy.
Okay. And that's what, Jimmy, because sorry to interrupt you, but let me just say this one thing. Because I talked to my friend CJ, another co-host on Hampton Leftists. He was like, I didn't even know who they was either. And one thing I got in trouble with that. Like, y'all want to work with anyone I know possible. But one thing I want to add, and we don't know these people. I barely know the Proud Boys. So not everyone is super well researched on all these groups. So that's why I wasn't upset. And some people got mad at me because I wasn't upset. I'm like, I just legitimately don't care. I got way bigger fish to fry than this. The last thing I'm worried about is some comedian saying. And I watch your shows. I usually know where you stand at. Rome, I know Rome. He's another person in our group, the Hampton Leftists. He actually did a 1 hour and 15-minute live stream where he broke down an interview, because this is when a lot of people were talking about it. And Rome mostly agreed. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I remember watching that live stream. Like, yeah, a lot of people need to watch this, actually.
He broke down my interview?
Yeah.
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I don't want to put any words in your mouth, Rome. I'm going on based on I believe, but he broke it down like, yeah, cause Rome's stance is, yeah, I work with anyone too. Like this is our stance is like, cause if you push in these issues that actually affect the black community, cause the people who get upset. Sorry, I'll let you go here, Jimmy. But it's funny, cause I got a lot of criticism of the progressives. That's why I really don't call them liberals that much, cause it's the progressives. The same people who got mad at you for that is apologizing for white progressives, prominent ones who said the N word in 2019. While Trump is in office, you got white leftists who are saying the N word and being openly racist. They said we should colonize Africa. That came from the Discord. But you wagging your finger at Jimmy Dore for talking to a guy he wasn't 100% aware of, which I say is believable. And I'll give you the last word, and you can plug anything you want to plug after this last thought. As a Black American, and this is what shocked the liberal consciousness. My friend, we don't know. CJ didn't know who the Boogaloo Boy was, because do you think I'm afraid of the Boogaloo Boy or the Proud Boys? I am around a ton of Latinos and Black Americans. Kansas City is one of the highest Black rates, about literally 3 times higher than national average. Surrounded by Black people and Latinos. We never bring up the Boogaloo Boys and the Proud Boys. It's not a thing. We're not discussing it. This is only a small part of the liberal bubble. This is something that people talk about. You know who we are afraid of? The police.
The police.
That's right.
We driving.
The
There's a cop over there. There's a cop. Oh, we worry about the bank is gonna rip us off.
That's right.
I am telling white progressives, get your priorities straight, because you don't understand what we are actually worried about. And this is go ahead, Jimmy. Sorry, I went too long.
No, that's what I try to tell people. That people like Magnus and you have common enemy, and that common enemy is Wall Street. That common enemy is Aetna and Blue Cross. That common enemy is Exxon. That common enemy is Raytheon. You guys have common enemy. Your enemy isn't a fucking another guy who's broke dick living in a fucking trailer. That's not your fucking enemy.
Let me say one more thing, Jimmy, because that's such a good point. Because there was a viral tweet. I apologize. I'll apologize. But there was a viral tweet on Black Twitter that said, and I agree with it, it went viral at that time. And this is what the Black community has been saying for a while. They said it's not our job to convince white people not to be racist. It's not our job. It's our job to advocate for our community. It's white people's job to convince white people to not be racist. So if you're a white person and you disavow your family member who's racist, you're actually being a coward and you're not helping our community. It's uncomfortable, but what you're supposed to do is have the conversation and drag the people to the right. And that, in a nutshell, is why I wasn't mad. Because if I got mad at people talking to the Boogaloo Boys, that would be inherently contradictory, right? Because I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to talk to the Boogaloo Boys. I don't want to talk to anyone who has extreme racist ideology. It's white people's job to do that. So why would I get mad at people talking to them if I have that belief? And that tweet went viral on Black Twitter. So a lot of Black people agree with that. And they want to get upset with you talking to a racist. I'm like, didn't we say it's white people's job to convince people not to be racist? I'm not going to do it. But white people should.
You know, what I try to tell people is there's racists in my family. I got a big family, a lot of racists in my family. What am I supposed to do? But what you do is you always engage. I mean, I grew up in a racist neighborhood, right? In Chicago. It was all fucking racists and cops. And I remember some people would say to me, some white people would say, you know, Jimmy, I'm not racist, but you know, when those black guys act like that, it just brings it out in me. That's what they would say. They would say shit like that. When they act like that, it brings it out in me, right? And I would go, well, you know what they say, circumstances don't make the man, they reveal him. So if you feel like they're bringing it out, they're revealing who you are. They're revealing that and they don't, because no one wants to think of themselves as being small-minded, petty, or racist. I'm not a racist, just those assholes, right? So I would kind of hold a mirror up to them. Like, no, that's actually who you are. And that's who I grew up with, right? That's who everybody I knew for the first 30 years of my life was like that. So you need to, this idea that you shouldn't platform, this idea of the platforming has become a toxic word. I don't believe it. That's all bullshit. I grew up watching Phil Donahue interview the KKK and fucking David Duke, and you don't you just give people more power by pretending you engage them. Either you engage them to expose them, or you engage them to expose them to your ideas. That's what a lot of people. Because I'm critical of the Democratic Party, a lot of self-described conservatives watch my show, and I've turned them, right? They've like, oh, I didn't think I thought this way, but now I get it. I get what you say about cops. I get what you say about the foreign wars. I get what you said now, and the healthcare for all. And they start to turn. And that's what that used to be, this gold standard for lefties. If you could get people over to your side, that's what you're supposed to have a message. You're supposed to have a message for people. And that's what I have. I have a message for people. We have a common enemy. Our common enemy is Wall Street, healthcare, military industrial complex. Your enemy isn't someone else who's a broke dick just like you. Somebody else is driving around in a fucking 15-year-old car. That's not your enemy. Somebody who's broke, who's out of job, who doesn't have work, who doesn't have health care, somebody who's got medical bankruptcy, somebody who's got student debt. Those are not your fucking enemies. We should be, but they want to separate us. And that's exactly how they do it. By you platform the wrong, you talk to the wrong person. You didn't fuck off. I will talk to anybody I want to talk to at any time. I'll talk to any other American at any time. And what bothers them is they can't stop me. I don't have a boss. I don't have a manager that they can complain to. I don't have somebody I'm trying to get a job from. And that's what drives them fucking crazy. So the biggest people who are my biggest critics are shit-lib Joe Biden supporters. That's who fucking come at me. And they pretend that they care about racism as they're voting for the biggest fucking racist who was ever president.
Our enemy is capitalism.
Yep, Jimmy Dore. I appreciate your patience and your willingness to stay on a little bit longer. We appreciate you coming on. And it says a lot because I had this conversation with Sabrina Savage. There is a lot of frustration with very popular leftist white people who are very popular, and they like pull the ladder up, and they don't like they'll bring a popular white leftist to talk about black issues. So you coming on and help elevate our voices, it means a lot, and it says a lot to your commitment to black issues. So I do appreciate you coming on. And anyone watching, stay in. I'm going to answer some questions in the chat that you guys have. But Jimmy Dore, where can they find you? Last words you have before we send you off.
JimmyDoreComedy.com is my website. I'll see you there.
Thank you, Jimmy. Have a great day, man.